Every film we work with, there's a design team and there's the director. There's a director of photography, there's the production designer, and the costume designer. I found my inspiration from Don and from Roger was endless. For instance, when we were going to the dungeon, which I think was the most difficult set for Don to light, it's completely built of ice and needed to be lit. And it took hours and hours, but Don did the most beautiful lighting job. Now, he had seen the set before I had, but I came to him when I was building the dress for that scene, which is the second dress that Tilda wears. We call it the dungeon dress.
Mr. Thomas.
What's left of him?
We built boards of fabric of the raw wool and silk that we were dyeing, and we did an entire succession of how we were going to do it. John has a camera. He put his filters on it of what he was going to use. And this is weeks before we shot it, and did tests and shot these tests for us. And I mean, of course you get there and things change and you adjust, but at least I could get in his head and I could deliver something for him to shoot that would work with not only the set, but how he was going to light it. Subsequently, on the first day of dailies from the dungeon, we're watching, and there is Tilda with those walls, and she is a part of that set. It's a completely different textile. It is textile, and the walls are resin, and the lights are something else, but she blends into her setting, which is exactly what we wanted. We wanted her to be part of her environment. So that was a perfect example of a production designer, a lighting designer, and a costume designer working together to create something. And Andrew was watching it, and he goes, I don't know if you guys did that on purpose, but God, she's just perfectly like the walls. And we're like, yeah, of course we did it on purpose. Yeah, it just didn't happen.
He's a stranger here, Your Majesty. He can't be expected to know anything. That was a great day working with Tilda and Skander. When I saw her for the first day, she's wearing this humongously elaborate dress, and she's got these big, humongous dreadlocks, and she's got a big ice crown coming out of her head. And when she turns her icy gaze on you, you know what I mean? There is a part of your heart that turns to stone. God! She's holding a blinking spear, do you know what I mean? And she's going to stab me with it. And that was one of the things that I used for that scene, was looking at the spear and just completely concentrating on the spear. And that's where all the fear for that scene came from. That was the one scene I got to do with Skander, who plays Edmund as well. And he's another weirdly, horribly, amazingly brilliant child, you know, who is just excellent, really. So the three of us had quite a nice kind of energy that day. There was a whole kind of three-way kind of passage of information going on. Who knew what? Don't you let her know that I told you what you know, and don't, you know, all that. And all of it centered around fear, even the White Witch, you know, even Tilda. Everybody's scared in that room at that moment. She's terrified. Edmund's terrified because, you know, this wonderful, kind of slightly strange woman that he's sort of been wooed by has now turned on him and stuck him in jail. And I'm terrified because I've had my legs beaten and I've been tortured for like 4 days or something like that.
We had a number of sets where ultimately we weren't able to find real locations to shoot them in. And so we decided early on, well, the only way to do this was to shoot it with a limited set, surrounded with green screen, and we would go find the rest of the world somewhere to put in there. Other sets, we knew from the outset, they're gonna have to be extended.
You can do a lot in the studio these days, but it's never as good or as big as a great location.
The White Witch's castle was meant to be this big towering world of ice. And unfortunately in New Zealand, they don't really have very big stages. So once we got off about 10 or 12 feet, you were looking up into a whole grid filled with space lights. And we knew that anytime we looked up, we were gonna have to extend it. It's probably the most difficult thing to do is remove the cast. We've got shots underneath Edmund and underneath the other cast with lights all above them and grids and metal and roofs. It's not an ideal situation.